Welcome back to Plastic Surgery Untold. One of the super exciting things about this type of meeting is actually getting to meet the experts, the decision makers. So Brock is actually one of the vice presidents of AVI and really focused on new development, new strategics coming to the market and helping meet unmet needs, really.
Yeah, no, and it's been a great kind of 5 years being in the aesthetics industry after the acquisition from AbbVie, coming over from the AbbVie side. So my last 5 years have been really focused at looking at new assets that are out there, new technologies that are out there, and also looking at things of what can we do to help practices work a little bit better. So what are the processes that go through? What's the technology that goes through, be it AI or be it integrations with practice management software? So it's kind of anything where there's friction and a rub in the office or with the patient. That's kind of been where I focus, and it's been really cool to be able to think about.
Super exciting because we're actually on a panel talking about medical weight loss a little bit later today stuff. But one of the things that I think is so interesting and where we really have to team up with you and your team and so forth is I talk to a lot of people about medical weight loss, but there's a huge journey for patients along that. And, prescribing medications is one stop of that, but it's driving, across, I'm in Texas, but driving across Texas, there's a lot of pit stops along the way. And I feel like people can be involved in a lot of those spots. And it sounds like your biggest focus is how do you help patients and practices succeed at all those different pinpoints?
Yeah, no, and that we've spent a lot of time thinking about medical weight loss because what we found out is, one, it's bringing a ton of new patients into the channel. So a lot of folks are entering because they want to lose weight, and this is an option. And then what we're finding out, which is really interesting, is as they lose weight and they're being successful, we talk to patients, and kind of 2/3 to 3/4 of them come in and say, "I want to do something else." But like, I'm not an aesthetic patient. I don't know how to talk about it. I don't know how to ask. I feel a little bit bad. Like, I've had this great success, so I almost don't want to ask. But I have another challenge now. And we also talked to some physicians, and they're like, well, I can see that they can, have a better look, but like, I don't want to come in and tell them you've had this great journey, now and go away. So there is this gap that everybody kind of wants the same thing at the end of the day. And the patient really, really wants it. So it is some of this of how do we help, or how does the industry help kind of bridge that gap between the patients and get them to the look that they want now.
That's been interesting because we've seen so much of that in our own practice. We started in 2022, and in full disclosure, anyone who knows my story, I've lost about 90 pounds on some of the medications, and I started in October of 2022. We now see anywhere between 1,500 to 2,000 weight loss patients a month in our office. And, we have this aesthetic naive patient that's coming in because as QSI and a few of these teams have talked about, 40-50% of the patients coming in have never done anything. And we see that when patients come in, they're like, oh, I'm not into that foo-foo stuff. I'm just here, just want to get in shape, get a little healthier. But as time goes, they get a lot of compliments. And really between that 3 to 6 month, they start to say like, okay, let's talk a little bit about it. And we've developed these Ozempic prevention and treatment plans. And so, but how do you educate them? Because I do think there's some really unique terms and ways, because if you've worked so hard to lose this, last thing you want to say is, oh, give me some filler. I want to be full again. Like, that's not on the top of your mind, but they do know they want to, enhance, look as good as they feel.
Yep. Yeah. And that, so we've been making some efforts from a patient education standpoint of going through and like, how do we talk about that? And again, help both physicians feel comfortable and patients come in, because again, like if it is that non-aesthetic patient, and I have friends with that, it's the same thing. They don't see it and they're like, or they'll say, oh, I have these now. And if you don't know, they're gonna say, oh, I want Botox for these. And being an aesthetic, well, that's not quite it. But like, it is a big gap for these non-aesthetic patients to be able to, one, feel comfortable, and then two, have an educated talk.
Because I think you have this whole concept, and we'll have to chat offline one of these days about it, but this Ozempification of aesthetics, right? And it's this trend, because in our office, we've already seen much, much younger patients with issues that we typically associate with more mature patients. We've seen, what do you do with a 20, 30-year-old who's lost 40, 50 pounds stuff? Do you a facelift on a 27-year-old? Do you do, because, the concept of being overly filled, overly treated doesn't really resonate. But on the flip side, these younger patients are so responsive to, energy devices, some of the E-stems, the muscle building. I think you're also, and I know you've been in this a long time, people will say men is the next frontier, but I think weight loss is something that truly resonates. I mean, I'm the walking billboard of this, that truly resonates with everybody. And the amount of toxin and And I had my jawline done by one of your products and so forth recently. And so, all these things that I never would have done 4 or 5 years ago, even though I'm in the industry.
Yeah, and you hit on a lot of interesting points. So it is, I agree, men actually are coming in. This is also something that we're seeing now. So it is like, that's what's next. And they're going to react a little bit differently to some of the different options. EMS, I think, is a great solution that goes. It solves the problem. It's something that, even if they weren't losing weight, like gaining muscle is going to be great for most men. So I think that's a trend. The other part that I think is going to be really interesting as people lose weight, it's just the skin quality aspect that goes through. So we might be talking laxity, actual just skin thickness or thinness in this case, and losing some of that elasticity, even among younger patients. So I think some of those are also what we're talking about. Is there a skincare regimen, or are there, how do you actually think about skin as you're losing this weight, and saying, are there things we can do either while you're on that journey or afterwards to help solve some of these problems?
Don't you think it's super interesting though, because you have these younger patients that are going to be so much more responsive to some of these treatments, whether it's energy, whether it's skincare. We can actually get to patients at a time point that's going to make the biggest difference for them, because when you're 70, 80, you can only do products aren't quite there yet that we can reverse 70 years of damage to their skin yet. So this is such a exciting time because we can make such a difference for them for such a huge time period.
Yeah, no, and I think the other interesting trend is people going through and thinking about preventative. So if you come in and you are one of these like 25, 30-year-old patients and losing a ton of weight, one, you're in there, now you're thinking about it and learning about it. And then I think now it is, you went through the weight loss journey, what's the rest of your life journey going to look like? So again, what are those kind of challenges that you typically have? And if you start treating them when you're, 30 years old, again, getting skincare regimen, like I know me as a 30-year-old, I didn't use sunscreen, right? And I had one of the tests. I probably should have. Down there, I have some spots, right? So, but getting people thinking about that and taking these preventative actions and like having a plan and being comfortable with treatments, I think is one going to be good for the patient. Is also really going to be good for the industry.
The other thing that's super interesting, and we've seen in our practice, those conversations were always challenging when you're talking about preventative, taking care of stuff, because most of us want now and want to see an immediate change. But even with the muscle building, with the skincare, with the advent of people coming in for the GLPs, we've had this mindset change where people are like, I want to take care of myself, and they're good with improving their overall fitness. The longevity has become a hot topic. And I think in the past, it was a little bit on the fringe because we maybe didn't have things that really were proven to make big differences. And now there's some real science behind some of the skincare, the longevity, the muscle, and those type of things.
Yeah, no, definitely today there are, which is really interesting, right? So I do agree. It's having that conversation of, typically before we always saw unwanted fat was the number one problem. You solve that problem, now it becomes these other things, and again, you're in the channel, you're having those conversations, you're educated. There's also kind of my role is also the innovation looking forward wise. So, that's one we always keep on, because I do think regenerative medicine is going to be one of those next frontiers. We're not there yet. A lot of things are really, really early, internal, external across the industry right now. But I do think, when you're, looking 10, 15 years out from now, there's going to be a lot of different modalities where we might actually truly be able, to regenerate a tissue and or have a very, very good preventative. So it never ages in a real kind of scientific based way. So the future is very, very bright. I think there's a lot of things that are very interesting.
Not to put you on the spot, Brock, but one last question. What if you were going to give us 3 like top trends that you would see kind of 25 rolling into 26? What would you say that those are?
I think the weight loss is going to continue being one of them. With compounded tirzepatide going away, sema's now available, so compounded sema might go away. So just seeing like what does that do, and kind of how are these patients that are going to get those benefits, how do they react and move off of it. Tagged right off of that is going to be, I think, the continued, how do you treat these patients that have had significant weight loss, and how do you move them into kind of that next problem that they're trying to solve? And I think the third one, this might be a little bit of my bias, but I think it is also a little bit of like, how can, us as manufacturers help you as practitioners, in kind of any way that we can. So be it process, like interacting with us, is it, are there things that we can do to help you with, kind of, be able to talk to your patients with more information, or technology solutions? In AI is the next frontier. I also spend a lot of time looking at that. And are there tools that we can help you have a really good conversation saying, well, this is what your skin looks like. Here are ways that we might be able to kind of predict what would be the next best option, and kind of where do you get to and track the changes in your skin to see a real benefit. Even if you can't see it, we're going to be able to have data from an AI model saying these are changes that are happening for you right now.
I think AI is super exciting, and Allergan has always been very proactive in terms of helping practices. Because one of the benefits you have over us is you get to see it from all sorts of different practices, what works, what doesn't. Because I do think right now there's a learning curve for everybody of how to speak to these patients in a way that resonates. What's the best treatment? Because it's a whole new frontier. It's not the same patients that we saw from bariatric surgery, because those people have multiple comorbidities, tend to be much older. We're seeing a completely different group. So I think that's super exciting, where someone who has a 10,000 square foot perspective can really help.
Yeah, no, like I said, it's going to be, I think 25 is going to be a great year. And again, the next 10 years, like, I think we'll look back now and say, man, can you believe we used to think that? Because things are going to change, I think, very, very quickly over the next decade. So.
Rock, appreciate you taking time. I'll see you probably in a couple hours on the panel. So thanks so much.
Thank you. Yeah.
We'll see you guys. Bye.